We're also available on, if you go to our website, you can listen at country.am, or if you're on, you have the Alexa app or the smart speakers, all that good stuff. Good, it's getting better, folks are saying. All right, sometimes we have to for Facebook Live, we depend on the internet and everything to work smoothly, and
we depend a lot on the internet these days.
We really, really do, and it's not always a perfect environment, but it works pretty well most of the time. But welcome, Sheriff Palmer.
Well, it's good being here this morning.
It's good being back. Before we get to the show, let me put the camera on my tie because I have to.
Yeah, you've got to show that tie.
I've got to show the tie.
Yeah.
This is from Bram over at Red Brick Deli. He loaned me this tie for today, and he says if I bring it back to him, he'll loan me another one for another time. So this is Pink Panther. Well, the camera's over here, yeah. So this is my Pink Panther tie, and you know when we had the back in the old days, watching Wheel of Fortune and Jeopardy,
right.
You always saw at the very end of the credits, Pat Sajak's wardrobe is provided by.
Right.
So now I can say this.
You can put a disclaimer on your
Yes. This
program.
Tim's tie is provided by Bram Farbstein or Farbstein. I think it's Steen, isn't it?
I think so.
At the Red Brick Deli, which is a great place if you're thinking about lunch today. So remember that. And by the way, tomorrow's Bram's birthday.
I think about lunch when I wake up in the morning.
All right. You and me too. So, Bram, Thank you for loaning this tie. It looks good with a purple shirt, I think. So, I think it looks purple on camera.
My wife shared a thing on Facebook with me the other day about it was the difference between men and women, especially when they're going on vacation. And the women's packing all the suitcases and the outfit for if it's warm and one if it's cold and one if it's rainy and one if it's, warm in the morning and cold in the evening and all that. And the man is just putting the number of shirts he needs for the week or whatever, and when they do their planning, the woman's talking about shopping and doing all the different outtakes and all the different things you do on vacation, and the man is just doing a schedule from where to eat from breakfast to lunch to supper.
That makes sense.
That's typically the way I operate. Is just when I get done eating, I think about where I'm going to eat next.
All right. Well, Sheriff,
I guess that's probably why I'm on sugar medicine too. Wouldn't you think?
you had lost quite a bit of weight there at one time, hadn't you?
I had. I'd lost quite a bit of weight there, and
I found it all.
I think I found a lot of it back too. I just found that I just enjoy food. I just enjoy eating, and I would do okay if I enjoyed exercise to go along with it, but not so much.
Don't you wish that were fun?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. I wish that was fun. A lot of people love to CrossFit and exercise and do all those things. Me, not so much. I mean, I will, but I just don't enjoy it like a lot of people do.
You exercise about running after people, right?
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So someone on a foot chase, you get to run
right
through the woods and catch them.
I do, and I get out and I work just about every evening. I get out and stop cars and patrol areas and do those things that the deputies are doing. And I think it is one of those things that I think it's important that if you're going to be a leader, you've got to get out and do the things that you require your people to do. Actually, the other day I went and picked up an involuntary commitment and took them to the hospital because the deputies were tied up, So I just think it's important if you're going to ask other people to do it, you ought to be willing to do it yourself. So that's kind of my philosophy.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
All right. Well, it's halfway through June. Warm weather is here. We may Father's Day weekend. We may hit 90 degrees today. So we do want to wish all of our fathers out there a happy Father's Day. And if you have a dad to remember, then just make sure that he knows how special he is. And if he has already gone on to another world, just keep all the great memories that you have close to your heart.
That's exactly right. It's Father's Day and Mother's Day is special times where you think about your parents and what they've done for you. And like I say, my mother's still here, but my father's gone. And you kind of dig back in your memory banks and you think about some of those pieces of advice and some of the things that you had learned over the years. And sometimes you find yourself doing the same things your dad did and your mom has taught you, and you don't even realize you're doing it. But it's that important training that you have as a child growing up. And so we encourage all your fathers out there, especially if you have small children, understand that everything you say and do and the way you're acting and what you're saying, they're learning. So if you look at yourself and say, do I want my child to be like me or not? And if not, you need to make a change.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, the warm weather's here, and there's a lot of people outdoor activities going on. Watch out for venomous snakes out there if you're out, or any other kind of wildlife.
Right.
That could be a threat. And if you have your kids outside playing, make sure that they're monitored closely.
That's exactly right. And, with the heat coming in today, too, we discussed a little bit last week. See, I did remember. We discussed a little bit. Right. We discussed a little bit last week about the heat strokes and, and overexerting yourself and things outside. So remember to cool down and take those breaks. If you're out working, try to do that in the morning or the evening, and good siesta in the middle of the day will help. So
and drink plenty of water. Water's the body needs the water.
It is.
And a lot of people.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to say a lot of people think that they can drink a soft drink and that hydrates them, but really doesn't. So don't, if you're out working in the hot sun, don't drink soft drinks or a beer or anything like that. Right. Drink water. That will actually, and I think Gatorade is pretty good too.
One of the other things a lot of people don't realize too, even if you're out doing water activities, if you're out swimming, boating, jet skiing, those kind of things, and you're in the water all day, you still need to ingest water. Mm-hmm. A lot of people don't think about drinking water and ingesting water because they're out swimming and in pools and in the lakes and those kind of things. But you still need to drink plenty of water before you do that, because even being in water, you can still overexert yourself and overheat when you get out of the waters. You just be dehydrated when you get out. So be sure and drink plenty of water, plenty of fluids, and keep yourself hydrated. All kind of stinging insects out there and little creatures and
Shannon mentioned ticks. Yes,
right. Yeah, I saw that.
I remember back when we were growing up, there was a concern about, was it called Smoky Mountain Spotted Fever?
Rocky Mountain.
Rocky Mountain.
Yeah.
All right. Is that still a concern today?
It is, and they're, of course, Lyme disease and all those kind of things come with tick bites.
That's exactly why I stay away from limes. I go only with lemon.
Yeah, I think it's a different kind of lime.
Okay.
But those things come from, your ticks in particular. But there's a lot of different kind of stinging insects and different things out there that can bring you troubles, and so you want to watch out for that. So actually, one of my German Shepherds came out yesterday. I think it was yesterday morning, the day before yesterday morning. Its head was swelled up and was, just twice the size it should be. And we thought it was snake bit, and my daughter took it to the vet. And when they got out there, the vet said that they didn't even think it was a snake bite. They thought it was some kind of insect. So even with your animals, and your pets, you have to be careful with stinging insects and biting insects that are out there.
And the insects seems to be pretty bad already this year. We had kind of a mild winter, wouldn't you say?
Right, I would think so.
Yeah. So I know we had some cold days and a few snowy days, but it was a strange winter.
And it has been wet. So
very wet, yes.
The damp, wet weather also breeds insects. So.
Especially mosquitoes.
Right.
Which none of us are fond of those.
No, I've always said jokingly, but it's true, I guess, that I always said a mosquito would fly 10 miles to bite me, and that's the way it works. So we can be outside doing outdoor activities, and most of my family can be out there and never get a bite, but me and my daughter both, we get eat up. We get
it's like have a big target painted on
you. Yeah. So we're kind of like, most people have a Centinela candle or something to keep the mosquitoes away from them. Mm-hmm. I think they bring me and my daughter around, so they'll just bite us and leave everybody else.
Makes sense. Yeah. Well, last week on the show, we were talking about press releases when they were issued. They are pretty much only focused on the big cases, right. And if they don't see every single arrest, I mean, it's not because you guys are being lazy and not writing press releases, but
right.
You just don't have time to write every press release, and it's not always needing to be released.
It's not always newsworthy.
Yeah, traffic violations aren't really newsworthy, but huge arrests. And when I mentioned that yesterday, I was not expecting Roger to send me about 8 or 9 in that afternoon.
I think Friday evening we got a lot of press releases last Friday. They just came in just one after another.
Goodness gracious. I was sitting down, I was like, okay, I'm done. And I get another email from Rogers, like, another press release.
Right.
So it was a very, very busy day on press releases, and a lot of major things happened.
Right.
That, shall we go over some of them? I know we can't mention all of the details on all of them because the court cases are still have to be determined.
The other thing to remember too, and when people talk to him out in the public, it's just something to remind everybody that, the volume of things we have coming in now. I think last year we answered something close to 40,000 calls. Last year it's 39,000 some odd calls that we did last year. So it's physically impossible for me as sheriff to know about every single case and every single call and every arrest and everything coming in. Used to, when the call volume wasn't that bad and several generations of sheriffs ago, people could stop the sheriff on the street and ask him what happened on this case or that case or this arrest, and pretty much the sheriff knew everything kind of going on, but today it's just kind of physically impossible to know all those cases. So I was looking through some of these press releases too, and that Roger was putting out. There was a couple of them that I had no idea that anything was going on with them, because when you have good people out there working and good investigators and good leadership, they don't need to have permission to do everything they do. They can go ahead and follow their investigations and do those things. So some of those things, I read press releases for the first time like everybody else does.
All right. And it's interesting too, because there is so much nowadays that does go on, like you mentioned. I have a scanner at home that I have, and that thing never shuts up.
No, it doesn't.
Honestly, and I have a program for Cherokee County plus our surrounding counties, and as soon as one county stops talking, another county starts talking.
Right.
And I'm like, I probably need to unprogram all these surrounding counties because I need some rest.
Well, one thing, also to remember, and I've mentioned this before, just so people kind of understand the dynamics of it, is that, you think about, we average something like 4.8 calls an hour or something like that, almost 5 calls an hour coming in. But let's even take the low ground on that. Let's just say it's 4. Say we get 4 calls an hour coming in. A lot of people don't think about the concept of, as those 4 calls are coming in for this hour, though 1 or 2 of those calls may take multiple officers to answer those calls. And then on those calls, it could potentially take multiple hours to do those calls. So if you have something like a sexual assault, or if you have a major breaking and entering where you have to do a crime scene and fingerprinting and all those kind of things, you could literally be out there for 30, 45 minutes, an hour or longer on a crime scene, interviewing people, dealing with things, whatever. You may have multiple officers doing that. So while those officers are spending an hour on that crime scene, there's still 4 more calls coming in on top of that. And so when you think about 4 calls an hour or 5 calls an hour, that don't seem like a whole lot. That don't seem like that's that many calls. But when that's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week of constant calls coming in back to back, one after another, that takes a lot of manpower and a lot of time to do that. And also the other part of that a lot of people don't realize is when you work those calls, you've also got to take in consideration that you've got to have time to have court preparation, to write reports, to testify in court, for any kind of hearings or anything maybe involved in that, grand jury, probable cause hearings, all those kind of things that go along with that. And somewhere along the way, you got to spend time to go home and lay down and go to sleep, and you got to eat and all those kind of things. So.
Yeah, simple math would say 4 calls an hour. That'd give, if it's just one person responding, okay, you get 15 minutes of my time, then I go, kind of like a doctor's appointment,
Yeah.
But you can't just do that. You can't just give someone who has a big problem 15 minutes and say, okay, I've got to move on to somebody else now.
But now one thing we do acknowledge, and also we want to be honest about these things and transparent. There are some of those calls that may take 30 seconds or may take a minute. It may be a phone call. It may be doing a security check on a business, that literally is getting out, shaking a door and checking a window, and you've been there 1 minute or a minute and a half or 2 minutes or 5 minutes, and then you can clear and go on to something else. So when we talk about those 4 calls an hour or 5 calls an hour, we're including all of those security checks, extra patrols, phone conversations with people, all those different things that people are calling in about that needs a response from a deputy. So we don't want to mislead people on that and make them think that every call takes an hour or every call takes 20 minutes or whatever. There sometimes it doesn't. But all it takes is 1 or 2 of those calls to throw everything off whack.
If you have something major going on, then it's certainly going to take a long time to investigate and just to respond, and probably multiple. Like if you have a standoff, that's hours usually, and
sometimes days.
But back when you first started in law enforcement here in Cherokee County, how many employees worked at the sheriff's office at that time? Do you approximately?
Probably less than 20.
And now it's
right at 100.
100. So that's how much the sheriff's department has grown. The sheriff's office. I keep on saying department. It's an office. Has grown in the last.
You attended my class last night because that's what I taught last night.
Really?
It's an office, not a department.
An office. I have to. I see it online printed so often. Sheriff's department. I was like, no, it's an office. But you've had that class on the radio before.
Yeah.
And I'm getting choked up now. But what was I talking about? I forgot what I was talking about. I got choked up, and
we got talking about office, and you got sidetracked.
Oh,
right?
The number of employees showing how much it has grown, and the call volume back then, when it was 20 people, it was consisted of just a.
Let me for those that's moved into the area or listening via Facebook or around the world on the internet, I want to explain something that a lot of people do not realize. When I started at the sheriff's office, I started August 8th of 1996 at the Cherokee County Sheriff's Office as a patrol officer. Actually, I started as a bailiff in the court system and then moved out into patrol first opportunity I got. But when I started in 1996, I think there was something like 7 deputies that was patrolling this county. We had 1 investigator, and that was it. 1 investigator and 7 deputies. What happened then was that you worked till about shift changes came. Everybody worked of the evening. You had a few that worked of a day and a couple worked of a night, but about everybody worked through that busy evening time. And then along about 2 o'clock in the morning, everybody went home, went to bed. And nobody even patrolled after 2 o'clock. There was sometimes a Murphy Police Department officer out after 2. Sometimes there might be an Andrews Police Department officer. But the highway patrol went home, the sheriff's office went home, the police departments went home. Everybody went home.
There was a demand.
There was not even a need for an officer to be out after 2 o'clock in the morning, and just a little over 20 years ago. And then what would happen was if a call came in the middle of the night, if there was a domestic or there was a trespassing call or a prowler or something going on in the middle of the night, the dispatchers knew where everybody in the county lived, knew where their homes were, and they just contacted the closest deputy that lived with that call. And you'd have to get out of bed and go put your clothes on and go answer the call. And then when you cleared it, you'd come back home and go back to bed till your shift started the next morning. And one of the things, and I think I may have shared this on the radio, I had some in the late 90s when the in-car cameras first started coming out in patrol cars. We had a grant to get an in-car camera, and I had one in my car.
A VHS.
VHS camera, yeah. And so I still had some recordings of that, some VHS tapes at home, and I found a VHS player and started watching some of these old tapes from when I was on patrol in 97, 98, 99, along in there. And I made an arrest on I think it was either a Wednesday or a Thursday evening, and it was like at 12:30, 1 o'clock. You're right about lunchtime. Out on 64 West, and I was driving the person to the jail in town and still had my camera on. And when I topped the hill out that Arby's coming all the way into town where the old jail is, or at the courthouse, where the courthouse is, or where the new part is where the old jail stood, I drove all the way from 64 West to the new jail, and coming all the way from Arby's into town through the center of town to the jail, I passed 4 cars.
4 cars.
All the way in, you know.
And now
you sat at the intersection or out there at 64 West trying to get out. You may sit for 5 or 10 minutes before you can ever get out on the highways. There's so many cars coming through. And so I think a lot of people, especially if they moved into the area, they don't understand or appreciate how Cherokee County has changed in the last 20 years.
Back then it was I don't say it was Mayberry. It was, a lot quieter than it was. It was busier than Mayberry, but we just didn't have the issues.
And the other thing was, back 20 years ago is that, or a little over 20 years ago now, probably 23 years ago now, is that when you went on a call, if you had a domestic or you had a problem or a fight type of thing that you went to, you kind of knew who they were. You knew kind of what to expect when you got there. You knew the family. You knew kind of who you were dealing with, kind of thing. But in today's day and time, we very rarely know who we're going to deal with when we go on those calls. It's 99 times out of 100, it's people that we don't know where they're from. We don't know their history. We don't know their background. We don't know anything. So we're literally walking in blind to things now, as back then we kind of knew what we were getting into. So now we have to have the updated trainings. We have to have certification programs. We have to have a lot of different techniques, a lot of different trainings now that we didn't used to have for that.
Back then too, we didn't have to do active shooter drills.
Right.
We'd never heard of such a thing as trying to harm a school.
And I'm going to tell you, this is going to sound crazy to a lot of people that hears this, but it was the truth. I graduated Murphy High School in 1990, so along in the late 80s, early 90s, when I was late 80s through 90, when I was graduate at Murphy High School, every truck in the parking lot had a rifle or a shotgun in the gun rack in the back. And we would literally, during study halls or during, we had ag classes and different things back then that we trading industry classes, those type of things. And so sometimes we got a project caught up and we didn't have anything to do. The teachers would let you go to the car and get your guns and bring them down to the classroom. Mm-hmm. And sometimes we would trade guns, we'd set cans up behind the school and shoot, kind of thing. And nobody thought anything about it. Mm-hmm. Nobody, it never crossed anybody's mind. Today, if you got seen walking through a parking lot with a gun at the school, we had to have all kinds of law enforcement responses and arrests and all those different things that's happening because we live in a different time than we lived in then. But back in the day, back when things were a lot simpler here in Cherokee County, we had a lot of freedom and enjoyment of doing things like that we just can't do anymore. And one of the things along that, I was talking to my kids the other day about some of these things we used to do. Our kids' generation, our young people's generation, does not know what it means to live without fear of terrorism or fear of these things that's happening.
And it's sad.
I
didn't grow up with fear.
No, we had no fear. We had no fear when we were growing up. I've told this before too, and it's true that at my house where I grew up, we had a gravel road that ran in front of it. And my sister and I would go out and sit in the middle of the road and make mud pies and play with cars and stuff. You ever heard people say go play in the road? Well, we literally did. We went and played in the road. And so when you went out there and you played in the road, you could hear a car coming. You'd gather all your stuff up, leave, the car would pass, and then you'd go back and play again. And so there was not even a fear of, of people stopping or approaching you or anything like that. And like I say, we just live in a different day and time than we used to.
Yeah, back then we'd walk up and down the roads, no worries, and no worries about getting abducted, things like that. And another thing too, I think that has just created a huge demand, and I'm sure you've seen back then. We didn't have cell phones, so if anything happened, no one called from the side of the road saying, I see smoke come from this mountain. No. Or they'd have to go to a place, find a phone, and by that time, they probably gave up.
Right.
So I'm sure just having cell phone access in people's hands that don't have cords hanging to a wall, that has greatly increased your call volume.
It has. And like when you have an accident or something happens on the highway, generally a dispatcher can tell you when a wreck occurs before they ever pick up the phone and talk to anybody, because what will happen is we have, I think we have like 7 trunks or something of 911 availability of calls coming in at the same time. Everything will light up at the same time. Oh, I'm sorry. Everything will light up at the same time, and so they say all the phone lines light up at the same time. And when that happens, they generally know an accident's occurred somewhere because everybody's jumped on their cell phone and called 911.
And before, if an accident occurred, it would probably take 5 or 6 minutes at least for someone to get to a phone to report that, and then you probably get 1 or 2 calls at the most.
Right.
So cell phones have made things way convenient.
They have.
By the way, you were invited to a pool party. We were talking about this.
I saw that.
And someone said that they wanted Sheriff Palmer to show up in his swimming trunks and be a part of it and just join the crowd.
Uh-huh. And that was when I saw that.
It's going to be Friday, July 27th. So you got a month.
Right.
At 6 o'clock.
I think I got my phone tied up here. I think I'm going to be on vacation.
Think you're going to be... Okay,
it's somewhere along that time, but I'll check. And see.
Yeah,
if I'm not on vacation, I'll drop by.
Yeah, that was discussed at one of the meetings. Like, Derek needs to be there. He doesn't have to be in uniform, but it's just nice to have folks there.
Right.
And we invite all of our law enforcement community, and it is the Recover Our Mountains, and the whole idea is that our kids need things to do to keep them active, and our plan and our goal is to have some folks there that have been addicted to drugs and have gotten past that. So there's a lot of folks around there who's been sober and clean for a year or so, and we want them to be role models for those kids that are maybe in school right now or thinking about experimenting with drugs. And if those kids can just talk to the people that are in recovery and say, those folks say, here's what I went through when I was on drugs. Do you really want to go down this path? So, and there's just a lot of things. But the pool party is going to be in Andrews, North Carolina, and that's at 160 Park Street in Andrews, right there at the Andrews Pool. And we appreciate the town of Andrews for making it possible so we can have this pool party. And we invite all of our listeners to go to our Recover Our Mountains Facebook group and follow along with the information there. So, but we'd love to see you there, or any law enforcement officer there.
Well, going back to what we talked about before about, the way our county has changed and the things that's happened in our county, I don't think anybody has any grand delusions that we're going to go back to that way of living. I don't think that we'll ever accomplish that, of going back to that way of living. However, I do think that there's things we can do to make our community better. And there's things that we can do to help foster going back to treating each other better and loving each other more, and helping those that are having troubles and addictions, of helping them beat their addictions and get clean and those type of things. And so I think there's things we can do as community members to help our situation, to help the things that are going on. But we have a lot of people that are looking for a sheriff, looking for a mayor, looking for a governing board that will turn our county back to what it was 25 years ago. And that's just an impossibility. I feel like that it's not going to happen. So I think what we need to be doing is, even though I look at the past as kind of rear view mirror in a car, that it's good to look into to see where you've been. But if you stare into it, you're going to wreck somewhere. And so I think that's kind of, when we talk about the way things were and the way things happened in the past, I think it's good to look into, it's good to think about, it's good to remember, it's good to reflect on. But if we concentrate there and stare there, we're going to wreck the car. We're going to run off the road somewhere. So I think we need to look at what's in front of us and see what's out there, and try to make plans and things to help steer in the right direction. And I think things like this, such as this pool party and things they're doing on Recover the Mountains, I think it's a good idea and a good plan to keep the car steered in the right direction.
And there's a lot of groups out there that are devoted to doing things. This isn't the only group. I'm part of this group here, but it's not the only group. There's High on Hope that is working very diligently, and several other groups. We're all trying to just do our small part to help people. And then your office does quite a bit. And the Day Youth Center, is that still active?
It is. They're still working on revamping some things on that. And it's one of those things that we don't know how long it'll last. We don't know if it'll be successful or not. We don't know, if we need to change the things we're doing or not. We're just playing it day by day, month by month. And next month it may be closed down. We're not doing it anymore. But at least we made an attempt to try to do something.
If you had not made an attempt, you knew the answer was the same. Nothing changed.
Right.
So if people can do things, reach out. And Peggy Adams was at the Andrews board meeting Tuesday night, and people call her the kindness lady.
Right.
And she was talking about the people, the backpackers, that she's tired of hearing about the word backpackers.
Right.
And she has these kindness bags that she just pulls over, asks what kind of problems are you facing right now, and how can I help? And she gives just some supplies, or maybe food, things like that. But we do live in an age where a lot of our people that are at the age of being parents, their lives aren't exactly where they need to be, and their kids are seeing the effects of that.
That is a good assessment of that. You talk about like the term backpackers there in Andrews. One of the things I keep reminding people is, when you use terms like that, you're focusing on the wrong thing. When you say the backpackers, you're focusing on someone walking down the street with a backpack. If your issue is drug activity, then we need to talk about drug activity. If your issue is trespassing through your yard, if the issue has been on your property and trespassing, we need to talk about trespassing. We need to talk about those issues. If it's homelessness, if you're talking about somebody sleeping, off the grass, off the side of the road, instead of focusing on the term backpacker, let's focus on homeless. What can we do about homeless type thing? So I think it's not intentional, but I think that when we use a generic term like that, it can mean a lot of things, and we focus in on a lot of things. So we need to talk about whatever the issue is, and quit focusing on those things that don't really matter.
If there are folks out there that do want to help our community in ways, whether it be homelessness or drug prevention, I mean, in my mind, prevention is so important, because if we have prevention, then we may not have to have a need for recovery.
Right.
What ways can you suggest for folks to reach out and lend a helping hand?
Well, one thing on prevention is being involved in people's lives. You've heard me say from the last 4 years is that it's about relationship. It's about having relationships with people. And so when you talk about the homeless, when you talk about the drug addicted community, when you talk about those that are less fortunate, it's one thing, and it's needful. Don't get me wrong. It's very needful that when you have people that's in those situations, to do what this lady you're talking about, to be kind to them, to hand out the things they need. And
apparently I got her name wrong. Yeah. It's Peggy Oinby.
Okay.
Instead of Adams.
Okay.
I got the last name wrong, apparently. So continue. Okay. I'm sorry.
But that's needful. We need to do that. We need to help take care of those that are around us. However, what we're forgetting about what can we do on building relationships to prevent that from happening. So when you have people in your community that may have a home, that may not be homeless, that may be struggling with different issues or different things, we have to invest in their lives before they become homeless, and invest in their lives before they turn to drugs, invest in their lives before these things. So I say all that to say this, in all of our churches and all of our communities and all the things around, we can look around us and we can see people who are needy. That they're, like I said, they may not be homeless, they may not be drug dealers or those kind of things, but they're needy. They're in need. And so I think as being neighbors, we need to invest in our neighbors' lives. Talking about the way things were years ago, we knew who our neighbors were. We talked to our neighbors. We communicated with our neighbors. If our neighbors were sick, we took them food, or we took them soup, or we knocked on their door and see if they needed anything. Could we help them in some way? And that's those type of things we've lost over the years, that we don't invest in our neighborhoods. We don't invest in our neighbors anymore. And I think if we could get back to investing in our neighbors and investing in our neighborhoods, then that could work into some prevention measures so we don't have people homeless and we don't have people drug addicted and those type of things. Along with those lines also is the fact of just different educational things.
Right.
One of the things that we have struggled with the last few years, and I think we all want to accomplish it and do it, but is working with the school systems of getting education in the school system as far as drugs and those type of things. And we've done some things like that. I've taught some classes. I've done some character ed classes and done those things in the schools. But the way the systems are set up now with core curriculum and with the testing and all those type of things, sometimes that's difficult at best to get those things accomplished. But we're continuing to work with the Cherokee County school system to try to implement some of those things and get some education done in the school system. So I think there's not one clear-cut answer. I think there's a lot of multi-answers to that. But as a citizen, I think it all just goes back to investing in those around you that are needy, and those that are around you that needs help.
And I'm glad you mentioned that too, because I did fail to mention about the pool party.
Right.
We're targeting that to 6th grade to senior, so we're looking at that age group between 6th grade and senior year in high school, because this group will cover our mountains. In our community, we're wanting to invest in that age group for prevention and to educate. And like you said, investing in our youth is so important. I think people of that age group too needs to know that their community cares about them.
Right.
And this is one of the ways that we want to show that we do care. We're all here together. We're going to bring some resources together for you to talk to. I know that the Big Brother, Big Sister program works very well. So if we can establish those type of relationships with that age group.
I mean, we could send into another hour talking about parental advice, and about how to raise kids and those type of things. But one thing I've learned from our youth and from doing youth retreat weekends and dealing with youth and being in the school systems and those type of things is that no matter how our kids say that they want to be free to do what they want to do, they don't want you to be on them all the time and tell them what to do and be in their lives and all those type of things, really they do.
They do.
Deep down, they do.
They need that.
They want someone to care enough about them to ask them, where have you been? They want someone to care enough about them to say, no, I'm not going to allow that to happen. You need to do this or do that. And that doesn't mean that kids want us to be mean to them. It doesn't mean they want us to abuse them or anything like that. But they do want someone in their life, from a parental figure or an authority figure, to care enough about them to demonstrate that, to show that they do care about them. And so I think that's important, when you talk about prevention things. I think it's important just to get that message across to our youth that there is someone that cares about you. There's someone that is willing to invest in your life.
And sometimes they're not getting that at home.
Right.
And so as a community, let's just step up and show our kids we care about them.
Right.
And it's not going to hurt.
Right.
Not one bit.
That's exactly right.
All right. I can see it. Whoa. Our time is 11:45. I did not realize we had run this late.
Right.
I'll have to get Pastor Odd Brown to pray for us for running his show late again.
There you go.
All right. Sheriff, anything you want to add before we say our goodbyes?
No, I just want to wish everybody, all the fathers out there, a happy Father's Day. And like I say, when we talk about investing in kids' lives, remember that as a dad and as a father, you know that it's important to invest in your children's lives, and it's important to be the man that you need to be and be the dad that you need to be. And like I said before, look at your kids, look at your son, say, do I want him to grow up to be like me? And if not, we need to change your ways.
Very good. Sheriff, thank you very much. We appreciate your time on Fridays and for all that you do. You're tuned to WKRK 105.5 FM, 1320 AM, cable TV channel 25, and worldwide we're at country.am.